This is Thames from London. Now, the summit is in sight on the big hill.
More than a mile above expedition leader Dougie Keelan at Camp 2, Dave Nichols and his team are 2 days' climb away from the summit. Today, they must get from Camp 5 to the Hornbeam Couloir and establish Camp 6, their launch pad for the top. But the first hurdle for the summiteers is the Diagonal Ditch. Over to Dave Maxwell.
The Diagonal Ditch, as it looks from Camp 5, looks fairly steep, but last night, when the sun got on it, it seemed to lay back a bit. We're now about 10 minutes away from leaving. We'll be moving up the Diagonal Ditch. Dave and I are moving up ahead just to try and get some fixed ropes up the couloir ready for tomorrow.
We started very early in the morning and we had our brews, which takes a long time to brew up and get going. It was -40 that day at Camp 5, and we were actually hoped to leave at 8, and we left at 8:30ish, only to discover that we'd walked 50 yards and my oxygen system wasn't working.
What's the problem?
Dave's arm bar screwed up. It's not working. He had to come down and get a constant flow. Trying things. Probably frozen up or something.
Yeah. Pissed off, Dave?
Slept in the bag all last night, so it's unlikely. We fiddled about with the thing and tried to get it going and it wouldn't work, and so I then had to get another oxygen cylinder. The end result was we didn't start till 10:30.
This is the actual top of the steep bit of the Diagonal Ditch, made famous by the Americans in 1963. We hadn't planned to fix any ropes on this part of the route, but as you can see, there are old expedition ropes on the route already. As we suspected, it wasn't quite as steep as we thought, and therefore not too bad. The only thing that makes it a little bit awkward is the actual lack of snow on the scree. There's a small gully to cross on a bit of frayed rope, and there you see Dave Nichols out in front, and he's on to the less steep part of the Diagonal Ditch, and there you see he's trying to sort out some of the ropes so that the support group can make use of them.
Al Miller's support party, carrying the equipment for Camp 6, eventually caught up with Dave Nichols, painfully breaking the trail. Everyone else watched, waited, and in our case, filmed, from the top of the West Shoulder and from Camp 2 at the foot of Everest, where Dougie was keeping his vigil. From here, the mountain is deceptive. The slope looks quite different from base camp, 12 miles down the valley. As the hours passed, it was becoming increasingly obvious that the chances of putting in Camp 6 as high as was intended were getting slimmer and slimmer.
I noticed there was a discussion going on behind me with Al, who was leading the support group, Al Miller, who's leading the support group. And I started to twig that actually we weren't going to make it. And then Al shouted up to me and said, look, you've got people running out of oxygen, you've got somebody with loss of a crampon. It then became evident to me, I said, that we weren't going to make it. So I said, well, look, there's a rock up here, come up to the rock and we'll have a discussion up at the rock. And then it naturally happened that when we were at the rock, we all, I think at the same moment, twigged that we weren't going to make it up the couloir. So I said, okay, we'll leave leave your kit here. I then opened up the radio to talk to Dougie.
Well, we're at 7-8. We're putting up 2 limpets, and we're going to spend the night here. And we could have a go tomorrow, though of course we've got that extra distance to do, over.
Yeah, 7-8. I mean, it's actually, in my view, it's too far. Well, David, it's a pity. How were the support group going, over?
Some of them not as well as others. Some of them quite well, over.
Roger, OK. Out to you. Hello 5, over.
Hello 2, this is 5, over.
Roger. How is your group going, over?
5, we're sitting here. We rather resent the implication that we haven't been going well today and that we haven't carried what we were asked to carry. And say that the support group wasn't going well, I think is a bit unfair. Roger so far, over.
I'm going to interrupt, Al, and say there is no imputation of any sort on you or any of your group. We're just trying to find a way ahead, over.
Inevitably, we were all disappointed. We were all under a certain amount of pressure, and at times we felt that we were supporting the supporting group rather than they were supporting us, and we were doing too much for them. I mean, when you're under pressure up on the high mountain up there, it's inevitably there are these slight frictions there.
Frictions are soon forgotten. Far more important, the mountain still stands to be conquered.
Henry, you heard all of that. I think we can make no decision about Dave going on until we see how they get on tomorrow. And then
Down at Camp 2 in a freezing blizzard, Dougie faces an agonizing choice: to continue with the summit bid tomorrow or to call it off tonight. He has stood here getting advice and entreaties from camps both above and below for almost an hour. And it was quite incredibly cold once the sun had gone down.
To Roger. OK, Henry, fine. I'm freezing my balls off out here without any gloves, and I'm going to go back in.
I could stand it no longer, and Dougie soon followed me in. At 8 o'clock, he got back on the radio to Dave Nichols. Dave made a long and impassioned plea for a go at the summit tomorrow. If they failed, at least they would have seen the conditions in the Hornbeam Couloir.
David, I'm coming to the view that we must give you the benefit of the doubt. I think your chances of getting to the top tomorrow are remote, but there is great advantage in having, if only, a close recce of the couloir.
Dougie, well, I'm delighted. Many thanks, sir.
However, I'm going to insist on one or two things. You must have your radio, and I want a midday schedule, and I want, I'm going to insist that you turn back at a reasonable hour. We don't want any more strange bodies up there for perpetuity. Do you understand, over?
Six indeed, over.
Lying in your sleeping bag at night, contemplating 1,000 metres of ascent on unknown terrain, it's quite a daunting feeling, But we still felt at that stage that we were in with a shot, even a very slim one.
Oxygen and food supplies are limited. Dave Nichols and his team have today and only today to make the summit over 3,000 feet above them. They know, too, they face the extra 1,000 feet they should have covered yesterday. And in the Hornbeam Couloir, conditions are against them.
Started at 5 in the morning brewing and getting ourselves ready to leave at 8. And, left shortly after just shortly before 9, actually. And then started climbing up the couloir and agreed a schedule with Dougie at 12. And on that schedule at 12, we'd only reached the constriction in the Hornbeam, which is, I suppose, about a third of the way up. And it was quite evident that we weren't going to make the top that particular day and get back again.
It's been very hard going, as you probably gathered, coming up the Hornbeam up here. We just fixed some rope over quite a difficult bit. Indeed, it was rather like a Scottish gully, with spindrift blowing down it for about an hour. Well, maybe half an hour. But we got through that and affixed a rope there. We're obviously not going to make the summit, so we need to make a decision which is as generous as it possibly can be for the second summit team coming up.
David, yes, I think that's entirely right reasoning, over. Well, I'm very disappointed, obviously, because this was our first carefully planned summit bid, which is going to fail. But, you know, you pick up the pieces and you make the best. You pick up what's good from what's been achieved from this and throw that back into the second bid, which is what we're going to do. Yeah, I'm disappointed, I won't deny that. And I'm sure they are too, with a chance of a lifetime to be selected for the first summit bid on a major Everest expedition. But it isn't going to happen for them.
The reasons we didn't get to the top were outside our control. In terms of climbing ability, in terms of physical ability to get there, we all had it. That's what's so frustrating. I mean, that's why I felt so inwardly depressed and bitter after we had to come back down again. When I spoke to Dougie on the radio, and he said, well, that's it. It was like a knife just going sort of sliding straight into me, because, you know, we were there, we were fit, we were able to go there. The weather was good. But the factors that determined that we couldn't go there were, as I say, outside our control. And those I think I've described already, is that, you know, the plan was too ambitious for the conditions, and we put too much on the summit team. There was too much responsibility in terms of leading the route and trying to establish the camp and all the other bits and pieces.
Limited resources had ruled out a second day. Now, 25,000 feet up, Dave Maxwell arrives back at Camp 5.
Oh, mate.
I'm going to get one chance. We blew it right out the window.
Don't worry about it. You did a good job. I mean, the very fact that it took bloody 5-6 hours to get to the campsite shows it needed another camper, didn't it? How you feeling? It's a ball buster, that one back, isn't it?
It's become clear that they were exhausted after the heavy carry, which didn't get as far as we'd hoped to locate that top camp. And therefore we must have a concerted and separate effort to get the top camp fixed firmly before we put the summit bidders, the summit climbers, into the camp for them to go to the top the next day. That's the conclusion I draw from this.
Well, I see Dougie's going to change his tactics for the next lot.
I haven't heard anything on the radio. He just
He spoke to me, you know, when we were having our little chat.
Yeah.
He said, we're going to have to get Camp 6 fully stocked before we send up the summit team.
Yeah.
And my reply was, lucky them.
That's right.
Yeah, we were very, very disappointed. I mean,
no.
you know,
It's heartbreaking.
yeah, heartbroken, really.
I think it's au revoir to Camp 5 or bye-bye?
Maybe. Bye-bye.
It's very pretty with all the pink stuff.
Al Miller could afford to admire the scenery. He hadn't just turned back from the summit. Alone or in small groups, everyone made their way down the ropes. The first to reach Camp 2 was Terry Moore, close to tears with frustration.
You won't believe the support that you've had throughout the expedition. Well done.
Thanks, Dougie.
Bloody good effort. Everybody, every single one of us has been right behind you all the way. And we feel so sorry for in so many ways, and so grateful for your terrific efforts. Very good effort, old man. Can we have a wet? Can we have a wet for Terry? Yeah.
Oh, I thought I'd frostbite my feet yesterday. Now I've got trench foot, I think.
Do your feet need looking at?
Just my morale.
David and co, welcome back.
Well, we failed, didn't we?
Well, wasn't through want of trying.
Trying to get up there.
Wasn't through want of trying.
No.
Wasn't through want of trying at all. And what I'd say to you, Ohan, don't be discouraged. Nobody in this world could have done more than all we did. And, yeah. Well, you must be disappointed. Of course you are. You wouldn't be fair or human if that wasn't so. And one would think the
I
less
spent
of it.
2 days fuming bitterly. And I must say that's all over now, so, you know, you can
Yes.
sort of talk dispassionately about the whole thing and,
Yes, right.
and so on. But,
Well, I mean,
it's inevitable.
that's right. That's right. I mean, it's a team effort, this.
Indeed.
We're part of a big team.
Without a doubt, it'd been fantastic to get to the top, but as long as somebody does it. I mean, everybody says as long as somebody gets there, but I know in the back of my mind I would have loved to get to the top.
I don't know.
You came all the way down the Kumar, then across all the way back to the oxygen.
Yeah.
I don't
How was that? Desperate.
It is. It really is.
You know you come down here,
It's
it's so
hard to,
desperate.
yeah. I mean, you can't even free feel. It really is, yeah.
Was that all pretty stable, the snow?
No.
No.
No,
especially at the bottom.
At the bottom of the couloir, you go... But a big hole. It's the worst bit of the whole couloir. I hated that.
What's that, wind slab?
Oh, yeah. It's hollow. It's
Fearsome, mate.
hollow. I mean, the whole right across the bottom of the couloir. Once we were in there, after about an hour or so going up there, we knew we'd never make it from there. Take far too long. Well, you would get to the top, but I mean, you're just committing suicide, really.
So, Henry, is this the demon spirit that's been behind the failure of the first bid?
No, according to this computer, they got on the top 2 days ago. But it can only show the logistics and the arithmetic of the thing and make sure that you don't finish up with too many people in one camp, for example, which is one thing that showed up quite clearly. And the other thing was yesterday, we were doing a hand-crank version, and it was different from what it said on the computer. And when I checked it out, it was the computer that was right. So, I mean, I think at these altitudes, you do make silly arithmetical mistakes, and this doesn't.
The other big question is that of oxygen. Is that also on the computer?
The use of the cylinders is, and its consumption, and where you need the cylinders and how much they weigh and who's going to carry them. All of that is here. But, of course, what you can't allow for is somebody who uses more than his ration. I mean, has a nice 10-hour sleep instead of 8, which we've allowed for, or he turns his regulator up faster. If he's just got one bottle and that's for the day, well, he's the loser if he runs out quicker.
We were inexperienced with the quantities of oxygen that we were carrying and how much we should use, whether we should use 2 litres a minute, 1 litre a minute, and how we should actually use all that.
Well, they seem to have run out quicker than I would have expected, put it that way. And they've learnt, but sadly, whether they get another chance to put that learning into use we'll see.
For Dave Maxwell, a heavy heart is further burdened by the implications of frozen feet.
I mean, I would, you know, on a scale of 1 to 10, that's a sort of an 8, which is that's a nasty superficial frostbite. You can see you've definitely got blistering there, and there's obviously blistering appearing here. You've got this sort of dusky blue.
Yeah.
That's a red herring, but I mean, you may well lose your nails later anyway. Yeah. For you, the game is over. This one, anyway.
But for the expedition as a whole, it was far from over. Dougie had already named the team for a second attempt. A strong contender had been Simon Lowe, the SATCOM man. He had consistently carried loads faster than anyone and was still going like a train.
You're okay, Simon. You're looking pale. You all right?
Yeah, I've had a few shocks over the last few days.
I know what you're going to ask me.
Oh, plenty. Yeah. Why are you looking so pale? What did you say?
What did I say? What was my answer to that? I said I had a few shocks in the last few days.
Which were?
Well, not getting in the second summit team.
You really thought there was a good chance?
Well, didn't you at one stage? It was announced that there were 7 contenders for those 6 places. And about 2 days later, they announced the 6, and Richard Pelly got a place on the grounds of you know, the very good work he's done up above Camp 4 and up to 5. Suddenly, I didn't even get a look in, so yeah, I'm a bit pissed off.
Simon wasn't the only one. But with at least 12 strong men competing for 6 places on the second summit team, disappointment was inevitable. After a spell of heavy snow and biting wind, the sun shone again on Everest. It shone too on the massive Japanese, Chinese, Nepalese expedition, some 300 climbers strong. They had been sharing the mountain with our expedition, but using a different route. On Thursday, May the 5th, our second summit team, led by Merv Middleton, watched their first team make it to the top.
3 tents, 3 orange dome tents. The wind is screaming. One of the tents is inverting all the time. In the wind.
4 days and we'll be in the same excitement as they are, no doubt. I'm absolutely delighted, I must say, for them and indeed for us, because, as I was saying, it does mean that the snow conditions and the wind and so on are tolerable.
It looks pretty mean up there. When you think that they've been planning for 2-3 months now, they stated a date, and then a week ago they stated a time. And then to the minute the guy stands on the top. I mean, that's a good performance. And in those conditions as well, because it's not easy.
Just wish it wasn't going to take 4 days to get there. Beam us up to Camp 5, Scotty.
That's called cheating. It's terribly deceptive, isn't it? It really does look like you almost reach out and touch it, and there it is 2 miles away.
Yeah, you start walking towards it, you're in for a bit of a shock.
Well, it's quite a fillip, isn't it, actually, to see that. It's a boost. It's a boost.
Yeah.
Down at Camp 1, you talked about it being an ego trip. Do you still see it like that?
Well, it has to be. I mean, there's no reason why anyone the slightest should go from 1 to 2 to 2 to 3, 4, 5, 6 camps, getting progressively colder and tireder and hungrier and exposing yourself to more and more danger. I don't know why we do it. That's why I wear this stupid hat. But, you know, we owe it now to the guys. I mean, there's been 36 guys and 6 pretty strong Sherpas, and they've all been pushing, and we're the culmination of 2.5 months of effort. So the least we can do is do the thing justice. I pray for a windless day, sunshine, and an oxygen system that works, and a body that's willing.
3 days later, between camps 5 and 6, Merv's body may still have been willing, but little else was going well for him and his partner, Steve Bell.
Yeah, Dougie, we're floundering around on huge slabs again, pretty knee-deep. The right pain in the arse. We're making about 10 yards every 20-odd minutes. Just hope hitting on head on a bloody brick wall up here.
Should we tell him to come back?
OK, Merv, I think you're nudging towards a decision to come back, having dumped the oxygen that you've got. So be it, Merv.
There were wet slurries coming out the Hornby and Kurwa, seeping down the face of the Japanese direct. And the summit snowfield, which is another 2,000 feet above us now, was actually collapsing and falling through the Hornby and Kurwa, which is a natural funnel on the mountain. And it was exploding out over the middle snowfield. And virtually every area where we had traversed had been swept. And that in some way pleased me. It vindicated the decision when we should have left the mountain. In fact, you could argue that we should have left the mountain 2 hours earlier. And old JC gave us the benefit of the doubt of 2 hours. 2 hours grace, I think, because some of the sizes of the slab avalanches that poured off there hours later, a few days later, JC was smiling.
Well, there it is. There it is. That's the second one we've tried. They've always given their best. But we've been beaten this time by very unstable snow conditions, and it's better to have everybody in one piece than and a disappointment than to not count them all back in again.
Is that the end, Dougie, do you think?
No, I think we'll work out ways of trying to do another regain on this. You can only do your best.
You've got 2 Italians here waiting.
I know. Chaps on the sideline who want a second crack at it, and who I hope will get it. Right, well, the decision's made. We've aborted this one, and we will make another plan.
So far, it's Everest 2, Expedition 0. Everything now hangs on what would be the third and final attempt.
Next week, our final effort. Everything now depends on the third attempt. For Keelan's expedition, it's now or never.
The Big Hill.
With 2 unsuccessful attempts behind them and only 2 weeks left on the mountain, the expedition's strength and resources dictate just one last shot at the summit. But leader Dougie Keelan has yet to cast his stars.
Do you still see yourself with a fair chance of getting to the top?
Well, I think people over the age of 50 have reached the summit in the last few years, and I'm not that old.
You're not going to say any more than that.
We'll see. We'll see. Regard my own candidature, I've hung back to the end, as you know, and did what I could to help the last lot in terms of the finer points of tuning their oxygen sets. And it does occur to me that there are actually none, now Dick's gone, except yourself and me, who have really experienced using this stuff right to the end and making quite sure that they don't get let down by frozen masks or valves or whatever. So I'm definitely putting my hat in the ring and offering myself as well.
Well, I think I'm grateful for that, because I think that although age counts against you, how old are you? 46 or whatever it is.
Even older than you, Doug.
Yes, only just.
Eventually, Dougie decided on his team. Dave Nichols and Al MacLeod as the lead pair, Henry Day and Luke Hughes as the second pair.
Some time ago you told us that this was really your ambition to be going for the top. How do you feel now it's about to happen?
Humble. Humble, apprehensive, but quite determined, I think, probably.
There was a stage where I suppose it didn't look so likely that you were going to be in the summit group. I mean, was that a bad time?
No, it wasn't a bad time. It was, as I think I said to you, you know, it is very much a team thing. I said that there were 2 aspects about this mountain. One was to be part of a successful team, and the other is to actually maybe knock the bastard off yourself.
Henry Day, deputy leader and responsible for the problematical oxygen, was not a popular choice.
Well, popularity has got nothing to do with getting to the top of the mountains.
No more?
I think a bit of ginger occasionally makes people try harder too.
But it doesn't alter the fact that he certainly wasn't the strongest. Nor really did he put himself to a test, I don't think. I mean, everybody else was carrying loads up to 4 or 5 or even 6, admirably. But there wasn't that same kind of testing, and you've got to do that load carrying just to see if you're acclimatized, to see if you're up to it.
The third was the time to go, and there wasn't going to be one after that. So I was not at all backwards in offering my services for the third attempt, and perhaps getting a few things right that we hadn't done before.
Yeah, I know Henry had been promised to be in a third summit party, and I sort of translated that in a way that, you know, if we got up it, he'd be in the third summit attempt to have a crack at the summit. As we've not done it, I was surprised at the sort of second choice of the pair, because I would have thought it would have been better to put up the 4 strongest people we had going and put them back up on the summit to go for it.
I stand by my selection of all 4 of them. I only heard comment about one, and I feel reassured that people did comment, 1 or 2 anyway, did see fit to come and have a word and say, look, I'm not too happy about that. Well, time will tell. It's invidious to go into people's backgrounds and so on at a time like this, but I stand by my judgments on that, and we'll see what happens.
On Monday, May the 16th, it's all happening at Camp 5, just below the summit pyramid. The summiteers, Dave and Al, Henry and Luke, are heading there along the ridge from Camp 4. Merv Middleton and his support group left early this morning to break the trail to the Hornbeam Couloir, carrying with them the equipment to set up Camp 6 for the summit team. The lessons learned on the first attempt have not been forgotten, but the task has been no easier.
It was just push, 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 push. And I think it just hit everyone at the same time. Everyone just expired about 8,150 metres in the couloir. We'd done the narrow section through the real deep snow where there's a prefix rope had already been put there. We fixed the rest of the route with rope as well. And everyone just ran out of steam and just looked at each other and realised that it was going to be the biggest effort of their life just to get back to 5 that night.
And that's Dave Orange coming back down there, Al. Give him a shout. Come on, Dave, you're just about there.
Dave Orange, the man who baked fresh bread for us, has been unable to climb using oxygen. Despite that, he has done all that could be expected by the summit team, now awaiting him at Camp 5.
I'll tell you what, I'm not.
Yeah, well done.
I couldn't have gone any faster.
One by one, the rest of the support team arrive.
On the Travis, you know where the Travis is unroped?
Yeah.
I waited there. About 10 minutes, had a fag. Tied myself up because it looked terrible.
Yeah.
Clagged her in. And I saw one guy coming down.
Well done, Terry. Good stuff.
Cool.
Hangnima namaste.
Namaste.
Very well done.
Namaste.
Namaste. How you doing, Charlie? Bloody impressive, mate.
Well, nice to get back. But, God, best luck tomorrow, eh? Big day.
Shit.
Do you think the plan as it now stands, in its modifications from previous attempts, covers every eventuality?
No, of course it doesn't. I mean, how can it? There are so many imponderables in the high Himalaya, particularly at the top of Everest, that you can't possibly cover them all. All you can do is set yourself up as best you can, giving yourself a fair and safe chance, and hope that all will go well. I mean, the imponderables, of course, are the weather. We can't possibly cope for the snow conditions or the fact that the night before there might have been a 6-inch dump of snow up there, which could make it very unsafe, as indeed happened on the second bid.
Where do you draw the line between the taking of risk and the achieving of success on the top of the mountain?
Well, it's a very hard question to answer that, actually, and it's almost an impossible one. You intrinsically take risk by stepping foot on the lower slopes of Mount Everest, let alone on those higher, bleak, dangerous slopes towards the top. It's a sort of calculated judgment all the way along. In other words, it's the balance of probability of survival. Simple as that.
Early on the morning of Tuesday the 17th, the Summit 4 follow the rope Merv Middleton fixed yesterday into the Hornbeam couloir. Luke Hughes, in front at almost 27,000 feet, stops to film his team leader, Dave Nichols, and his partner, Henry Day.
How was that? Big puff. Very hot too, isn't it? Oh.
Despite the presence of oxygen expert Henry Day, Dave Nichols is having problems with his equipment, as he had on the first attempt. His bottle has been leaking and is virtually empty.
I think I should give you this oxygen now.
Sorry?
I should give you this oxygen.
It's bliss to be in the shade.
How much further have we got, Dave?
Sorry?
How much further have we got?
Hour and a half, 2 hours. I'm afraid the worst is to come. It's the narrows, where you've got to sort of rock climb.
Then, at 2:30 p.m., comes the real bombshell.
Well, David, I made a decision. I'm very sorry for all of you.
Sorry?
I made a decision. I'm not going on.
Are you not? Well, you're going to be able to come to the camp and help us dig it.
Well, I'll bring what you need.
Soon, at the various camps, the whole expedition hears of Henry's decision to quit.
Henry, now what about yourself, over? Well, I think I'm gonna come back soon. Roger, okay, fine. Well, evidently it's too late to get back. Merv, I'm sure, is listening to this. And I'll be watching as you make your way back. I'm very sorry to have heard what I heard earlier this afternoon. And look forward to hearing the full story. And feel for you very much indeed. Over. Well, you're nice chap, but don't feel too sorry about it. I'm in a different league to theirs, a lower one. Tell them not to worry if I'm not back. I've got my bivvy bag and sleeping bag, but and a stove, so I may not make it. Over. Well, I would be very grateful if you could do all you could, because none of us will sleep easy until we know you're in. Over. Okay, Dougie. Sorry about this, but I think the others will make it. Out.
At Camp 5, Merv and Terry Moore are waiting to welcome back the Summiteers tomorrow. Now, they will have to cope with the crestfallen deputy leader, once Henry has negotiated the diagonal ditch.
Henry Day arrived back here, absolutely chin-strapped. I think he was about 5 minutes walking off a total collapse. We'd seen him coming for about half an hour. He'd been stumbling and falling, and and I just said, like, you're absolutely shagged, mate. And he just turned around and said, those boys are a different league to me.
Well, this is fairly devastating at that stage. I think there are quite a lot of people on the expedition who could have said that maybe he wasn't up to it anyway, and that his inclusion in the final party was questionable. But it was a fine time to find that out. What was worse, he then took the only other stove with him, which it's interesting. High-altitude mountaineering is all about attention to detail and survival, and attention to detail about looking after your feet, looking after your fingers. I'm glad to say I've still got all mine. It is all about attention to very, very fine detail. And when you're getting up in the morning at -40, and you've actually got to put your boots on and all that kind of stuff, things like missing out a stove are lethal. I mean, those tiny little details are absolutely fatal.
One small epi-gas cooker, the size of one of these things, boiling a pan of water like this can take maybe 45 minutes to an hour. And that gives you a litre, half a litre for 2 people. Okay, the third person's already missed out. Meanwhile, the brew's on again, and what happens? The 2 guys are still gagging. They need 9-10 litres to get themselves back in order. Meanwhile, you've got 2 tents, 2 groups, 1 cooker. It doesn't work.
And another problem, we found that of the 2 tents, one had 2 of the poles missing after it had been erected at a previous location. And this meant that the tent wouldn't actually stand up high enough. And if we had 2 people into that tent, it would have been absolutely impossible. If you imagine either trying to put your boots on without being able to sit up straight in the early morning, these boots are absolutely impossible anyway. That's bad enough, but trying to have a pee when your head is rather lower than your knees in a down suit with a harness on is a feat of hygiene which I don't recommend to anybody.
But Luke's problems are far from over. Without his partner, he will have to turn back in the morning, leaving Dave Nichols and Al MacLeod to make the summit attempt unsupported. And after dark, a storm will blow up. The next day, down at Camp 2, the mountain is barely visible, let alone the climbers. And the whole expedition knows it's today or never.
David, what is your feel, over?
Well, we're going quite well at the moment. You know, we're making quite good progress. The weather forecast, you know, the last Jap one, causes concern, obviously.
David, the choice is yours. I mean, you're going well. You're well up on time, it seems to me. As long as you think you're within a reasonable chance of the top, with a safe return, my advice would be to continue. But please feel under no pressure from here at all. You're the man on the spot, and whatever you do, we'll support. Over?
Yeah, okay, Dougie. Well, thanks so much. We'll have a bite to eat and a drink here, and I'll have a chat with Al, and then I'll come back to you, over.
Roger. Out. Okay.
Well, not too bad. How long do you think you can give it safely?
Well, I'll say safe. They're making good progress. They've been going since 8:30. That's 3 hours. They got to the top of the Couloir, which is a height gain which is out of the yellow band. You heard them say they're going well. You know, they could go on until 4 or 5. We'll just have to see what the conditions are. If the weather does clag in and change, then obviously circumstances will change, and that will affect their judgment.
They struggle on, out of sight, for over an hour. Then the radio crackles into life again.
David, hello, over.
Yeah, Dougie, I'm afraid the news up here is bad. It's bloody awful weather up here. It's really snowing. We've had about 5 inches. I'm in the middle of the crux at the moment, and things just don't look too good. It's desperately disappointing, but, you know, all my mountain wisdom is telling me, in fact, before I started on the crux, it told me to go back, but I said, bugger it. We'll go on and have a look. You know, I can't see any way out of this, over.
No, I think that's true. It is a disappointment, and after everybody's efforts, but sanity must prevail, and much best to get down in one piece. Okay, David, decision made. We'll call this off. You do your best to get back in one piece.
Yeah, if it'd been yesterday, we'd been up, over.
Yep, I know. We've missed it by a day. But, you know, you can't win them all.
Dave, never you mind the bloody mountain, mate. You just get down in one piece and take it easy. Hello, Dave Nichols. Go carry, mate. Look after yourself. I've got a welcome here when you get down. Go easy, yeah?
Well, there it is. A shame. Yeah. But I think I know right in the circumstances.
There's nothing I can say, Dougie. I'm really sorry.
At least we've got all the lives intact so far, which is a consolation. And I don't believe anybody else could have done any different.
Yeah, Roger, Dougie had to acknowledge your receipt.
We couldn't do any better, I don't think.
Yeah, everybody's absolutely done what they could.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
That's for sure. Why did we have to have weather like this today? We couldn't keep them up there. We couldn't delay it another day. We delayed it 1 day already to get the stocking right, up at 6. Why do we have to have this weather today, of all days? It's done for us, at least as far as the summit's concerned.
Yeah.
So it's now 6 o'clock. It's taken them 3 hours. It's quite good going, considering the weather and whatnot. It's howling a bloody hoolie at the moment. We're about 5-10 minutes away now, and obviously happy to see the tents. Another day to come down from the other side of it, isn't it? Jesus Christ. I reckon the wind's blowing about 45 mile an hour constant.
do you feel?
I could nearly cry. In fact, I'm very near tears. The amount of effort that's been put into this expedition, the fact that every time we've gone through it, things outside our control have stopped us. Today, you know, had we had good weather, we would have been on top without a shadow of doubt. It was a terrible decision to make. This was our last chance. You know, we've spent, what, 3 months' worth of effort here, 2 years' worth of planning. We've raised £250,000 for this thing, all to get onto the top, and our final effort was to try and get 2 on there. And then to have to finally say, we've got to come back.
Well, I would say that's a good example of slab. Wind slab. Guaranteed to make you fall.
And that is exactly what happened on the journey down. The victim was Merv Middleton, his 4th avalanche.
What happened, Merv?
It was a slab avalanche. It's been threatening to go for bloody weeks. Over weeks we've been saying we shouldn't go on it. Over weeks we have been. I was just coming back along it today, and next minute I was airborne. I went about 40, 50 feet. I went over some rocks and just twisted the ankle. God, did not give me a good beating.
And here comes Hopalong Cassidy.
Oh, yeah?
Merv Middleton, probably the highest limp in the world. Yes.
I'm losing a son out.
Happily, Merv, Terry and the 2 summiteers, Dave and Al, all got down without further mishap.
Right.
We love you, Mark.
You're serious. It's almost been a great pleasure to have you with us, mate. Delighted. Good. No.
Cheers, Granada.
It's been a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
Yeah. 3 cheers for Granada.
Can I say that, of course, it is an enormous disappointment and regret and sadness that we didn't get up. But I do believe we tried as hard as we could. And we were seen off on 3 occasions by conditions which, in the main, were outside our control. And one can't help feeling that there was somebody up there who had it in mind that we were not going to be allowed to get up this time. It's an experience I shall never forget. I hope that the friendships that I've been able to make will be sustained. I feel sure they will. And I hope the friendships that you've made will be sustained. I cannot think of an expedition of this size where there has been such little bickering, such little contention, and such general cooperation and friendship. And I thank you all from my heart for all of that.
Well done, Taggy. Great.
The fact of life is that Mount Everest, particularly on this West Ridge route, one of the hardest routes on Everest, the fact of life is that in certain conditions it is unclimbable safely and sensibly. And I believe to date all our operational mountain decisions have been sensible. So I can console myself with that, and I can console myself also with the thought that we'll have counted everybody in and counted everybody out.
So that was it, the end. After 3 months at the foot of Everest, for myself, I can't say I was sorry to be on my way back to the world. But there's no denying that for all of us, climbers and film crew alike, it had been the experience of a lifetime.